I want guys just to go and play. I think that's the big thing. Younger players, you want to see that they're going to take advantage of the opportunity by getting games and try to earn more games. Older guys, as we mentioned yesterday, we'd like to see some chemistry. And then I think the other thing is, we want to get to playing our game as soon as possible. And whether it's exhibition or if it's an inter-squad game, you want to see them try to put some things into action. So that's kind of what we're looking for here tonight.
You mentioned the younger players, and I know it's early and you've still got a list of games ahead of you, but are you starting with those younger players to see any separation or standout?
It's hard. I feel like they've all worked in practice. So that's what we've kind of, to this point, had to gauge them on. And there's a lot of players that maybe aren't great practice players at times, but they're performers in games and vice versa. So I think when you get them into that game setting, that's where you make the real evaluation on who kind of separates from the other guys. So that's why this 8-game stretch that we have is important for our team.
So your evaluation is still ongoing. You're nowhere near having a full read on certain players to this point.
I mean, we've saw the young guys, some of them play in Penticton, so you try to project, well, how does that fit in with our lineup? But at the end of the day, once they move past, and I will say the first few games, Vancouver most likely isn't bringing their big guys here. But once you get further into the exhibition season, you get more NHL games. So you get a real good handle on whether guys can play at that pace and execute at that level, or if they maybe need a little more time.
When you were at the whiteboard this summer, what was it about Yegor Sharangovich's skill set? What was it about what he brings that made you pencil his name in with those top 2 guys to start?
Well, I mentioned New Jersey yesterday, but he, at the beginning of the year, played with their top guys. He's got a skill set that allows him to play a faster game, and he can really shoot a puck. So when we think of trying to find someone for, our best passer, a lot of people say that about Jonathan, try to find someone that connects with him. We have a shooter now that potentially can work to get open and be a threat. I think the way he thinks the game, too, is important for us, and it frees Jonathan up a little bit. When you watch a little bit of video on him, there's a tendency, he reminds me a lot of Elias in a different way. When you watch players that are, if you want to call them 200-foot players, they always seem like they're rolling back to be an F3 high. Well, that's him a lot. And when you talk to people in New Jersey, he's a very good penalty killer as well. So he's similar to Elias in a lot of ways. So, we're hopeful that combination will be able to find some chemistry.
You talk about how he played with top guys in New Jersey. It can be, there's a different type of challenge there for a guy, isn't there, when you're sort of riding shotgun for those top guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And the lines are defense pairings that you're playing against, and that's a real big difference. When you're getting top pairs all the time, it challenges players, and I think it challenges them in a good way. And that's why you see, your elite players, they eventually separate. Because they want to be better. They have some fire and they have competitive drive that you're maybe the top defense on the other side, but we're a better line. And, you see some of those things in him. Very quiet still. He doesn't say a lot yet, but I think that'll change as he gets more comfortable.
Not that long ago, some coaches simply wanted 5 to 10 minutes and some toughness from their fourth line. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of fourth lines for a lot of teams in the league and what you're looking for from that group for your squad?
Energy, I think, is what we're looking for out of them. They have to be guys that have an impact in a game. So when you put your fourth line on the ice, and we still always do the 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, but it's a little bit blurred nowadays for the point that you were making. Now you're expecting them to contribute. I think you're expecting them to, not just go out there and maybe have 1 or 2 guys that intimidates a little bit. These guys have to intimidate with their speed and the energy that they bring. The added bonus nowadays with the way teams are shifting is they can also score and they can generate. So you need those guys to play with a lot of pace. You need them to play with a lot of energy. They need to be in people's faces. They need to be hard guys to play against, even though they might not be in a category of some other players that in years past have played in that type of role.
Topic of opportunity, maybe a player that you have a bit of a longer history with. I'm curious what you're hoping to see from Adam Ruzicka in this camp here.
Well, this is Adam's been around a long time now, and this is a moment for him where he's got to grab hold of it, and he's going to get opportunity. We've had a lot of conversations over the course of the summer with him about having that opportunity, but he has to I think he really has to take it on himself that he needs to decide where he wants to fit and where he wants to be. And that's now what it's going to come down to him. Like when you look at him, you're like, if this guy can figure it out and be consistent with the way he can play the game, he is a big man that would be hard to take the puck off of. I mean, we were talking about him this morning in our coach's office, and Trent Cole, when he was in Abbotsford, when he was coaching for their minor league team, he's like, can this guy please get called up? Like, he was too good for the American League. So now he needs to decide if, do I want to be that here? He has the ability. So now it's going to really come up to, how he makes it happen for himself.
What is it with him that he needs to make that moment?
Like with most young guys, consistency. So you saw last year at times, you're like, whew, I think he had 19 points in 20 games at one stretch. Like he was feeling it. And then it disappears a little bit. Well, you can't. That's one of the big things for us is finding that consistency. You may not have your A game every night. It's not realistic for 82, but it can't be a C or a D game. It's got to be kind of a B+.
In that stretch that we all remember, what do you remember seeing from him?
There's a confidence in him when he's playing that way. I think he has the ability to hold on to the puck a lot, and he uses his size to his advantage. So when you talk about building an identity for a player, his identity, you want him to be hard, but his hard means holding on to puck and keeping defensemen off him. His hard means taking someone right to the net and putting someone right on his back. Like he has that ability to do that. Like he could be a power guy. So it's up to him now if he really accepts that challenge, I guess, that we put on him here.
You're doing some things differently this season as far as system and structure. How long does it generally take for players or groups to kind of grasp that and go out there and do it without having to think too much about it?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Like, hopefully it's right away, but I think over the course of the year, there's always situations where you have to clean things up. I think it's important for us as a group to make sure we stay on top of things, and we keep putting them in different situations that they're going to see in games. So the more comfortable we can make them in practice, then it becomes second nature, and you just go play. You don't think. So we want to get to that point, but I think it's always something that you're working on and reminding them of.
Ryan, you've talked a lot about, or a little bit about that evaluation piece, and obviously being a training camp, it's a tryout, these guys have to come and they have to perform, but at the same time there's been implementations of new systems. So I guess as a coach, from your perspective, how do you kind of balance that in terms of giving the players the space that they need to try different things and be okay with making mistakes, but knowing that they have to perform?
Yeah, I think that, we mentioned yesterday, there's a danger in overcoaching, and I think that's what you're getting at a little bit. We want them to be really good in regards to, hey, when you make a mistake, it can't be a mistake that's going to be putting a team in a bad position. Sometimes guys are going to try things deep in the offensive zone. They're offensive players. You have to give them that freedom. It's the key situations where we really want them to be good at. So when you're leaving your zone around the blue lines, when you're entering the offensive zone around the blue lines, you can't put your team in a tough spot. So they're going to be allowed to make mistakes. I think that's part of the game. And if you challenge them never to make mistakes, then they're overthinking, like we talked about earlier. The big thing for them is to understand it can't happen over and over and over again, because if it does, then that's a situation where guys are going to be like, we're going to either knock you down or take you out. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you guys.